You're watching Joy News. My name is Daniel Daze. Let's take you to the Information Ministry, where the second of this week's Ministers' News briefings has taken off. Let's join them for the latest updates on COVID-19.
8 districts did not report any case at this period of presentation. Last week we shared with you our moving average. That is the average 7-day average number of cases that we are getting. We got about 500 and something. Now you can see that there's a downward trend. We hope that it continues that way, but that is still at a high rate that people must continue to do all the safety measures that we have been preaching to ensure that we get some reduction, further reduction in the number of cases that we have reported. This 641 cases based on the backlog has come from the spread that I'm showing you, majority of them from the mid-June all the way till now. And so as you can see, this is where it represents that, so about 65 or so are from 5th of July. But I believe that there may be some samples be tested as we clear the backlog within the same day. So this is what represents the 641 has come out of. We are hoping that once the backlog is cleared, this challenge will be able to get you real-time data anytime to do the press brief. Yes, for the more details, and we take this stage because we want to ensure that people see the environment that they're in and ensure that the risk level, and we hope that will encourage people to buy by the etiquette and the protocol that we have given. Of the 388 in Accra, Korle Klottey had 106 cases, Ladi Tupon 78, Accra 48, Ayawaso West 36, Lejoku 32, Tema 30, Lankwantanan 22, Tema West 10, Ayawaso East 9, and Ablekuma, the rest had 4 and below. For Eastern region, of the 50 cases, Akuapem North had 3, Suhu had 1, Kwawu East had 4, Ebuak North had 35 cases, Kwawu Afram Plains North had 2, Brim North 6, and then Chembo 1. For Central region, of the 7, 4 came from Upper Denshira West, Agona West had 1, and Fansiman 2. For Western region, we had 6 cases, 1 from Takusakeni Takoradi, 1 from Wasa East, Ahanta had 1, Ifiakwesiminti 1, Nzima 1, and Mpoho. Upper West recorded 12 new cases from municipal, which is 1, and Lambusi reported 7 cases, Nandom 1, Sisala West, and Adoli 1. For the 5 cases from North region, came from Ketu North 2, Keta 1, Ho 1, and Ketu South 1. Ashanti recorded new cases of about 148, and of that, 127 came from Kumasi Metro. So that tells you the level of risk there. Asokwema on 6, Asukwa 4, Sechere South 4, Oforikrom 3, Ahafano South 1, 32, Amansia South 1, and Ajuso 1. Upper East reported no case. Northern had 23 cases, 20 from Tamale, 1 from Sabuba, and 2 from Sanrego. The rest of the regions is Northeast, Oti, Western, Bono, Savannah, Bono East, Ahafo reported no case for this period that we are presenting. You can also see the 2 charts there, the number of active cases to the right. So you can see Upper East, Northeast have just 1 active case so far. The significant number of active cases, 3,000 are in Greater Accra, 912 are in Ashanti, Western had 137, Central has 230. These are people who are either in isolation in our treatment centers or on home isolation. The next chart just shows you a distribution of the states that has ever reported a case. The plain white are those who have not reported any cases at all. So the current force remains Greater Accra. We contribute about 55.2% of all our positives ever reported. Ashanti accounting for 21.2%. West Region has 2,051, accounting for 8.7%. Central Region has 1,071, accounting for 4.6%. And the remaining regions have 10.3%. And so that tells that there are 4 core hotspots regions that we need to take a critical look at. The next slide is showing the active cases, which show the same. This is a full distribution of the active cases by region. And like I mentioned, Ashanti had 912, Greater Accra 3,012, and Western 137. So these are the regions with the highest number of active cases. North-East has no active case currently. Upper East 1, North-East 1, and the Northern Region has 23 active cases. So, Honorable Minister, that's it for the core cases. But I also want to take opportunity to share some of the hotspots that the Honorable Minister mentioned, that we are having some outbreaks in workplaces. So there's a need to also rehash some of the things. The issue of workplace outbreak is that these people, either they pick it up from the workplace and take it to a community where they live, that enhances the spread, or they bring from community and spread at the workplace because certain etiquettes are not being followed. It has the potential to create some apathy, enhance the spread, and also reduce productivity. We are entreating all work towards reducing congestion at the workplace in any way that they will have to do to reduce congestion at the workplace. Because that's the first thing, so that social distancing can be maintained at these places. We are also recommending when a staff develops symptoms, it should be encouraged not to come to work, but rather seek medical attention rather than coming to work, and ensure that is all do that. Managers should continue to engage their staff on the safety precautions. That has to be done there, and ensure that the things they need for hand washing, social distancing, sanitizers are all available at the workplace. The workplace organization should be done in such a way that there's very little contact as much as possible. Eating together and all those things are things that should not be encouraged. And most importantly, should there be any suspected case or any positive case, please contact Ghana Health Service. We will quickly come do a risk assessment and assist you and tell you who to isolate, who should test, and also follow up these people into their communities and follow up with the testing and isolation so that we can really contain this. Thank you very much.
Dr. Abba, thank you for the update on case count and case management and the advisory on workplace safety and its management. Colleagues, as I mentioned, the second part of our brief today will deal with resolving hiccups with the testing program. We mentioned last weekend on Tuesday that there have been some hiccups with our testing program, and as you are aware, the testing program is a major pillar in this COVID-19. So the reason for which it's such an important pillar is that it helps us to identify positive persons early, to ensure that they are not in contact with the general population and are given supportive treatment so that we can cut the rate of spread. We have had some hiccups. This morning I want to invite Professor William Ampofo of Noguchi. They are coordinating the testing program to give us a quick update on how we are resolving the hiccups with the testing program. Prof.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think it's timely that we provide an update on testing. I know there have been some unfortunate delays, but I'd like to assure everyone that all the staff in the testing centers across the country are doing their best, and some of them are actually working 24/7 to provide testing for COVID-19. Let me start by going to our short-term, medium-term plan, which is the framework for COVID-19 lab diagnosis in Ghana. There are 4 key thrusts of the plan, and I am glad to report that we are actually on track with what we set out to do in the short, medium term for COVID-19 testing in Ghana. The first activity we set out to do was to strengthen the current PCR testing capacity in Ghana. PCR, as you know, is the polymerase chain reaction. This is the direct detection of the virus that is associated with COVID-19 by a molecular method. So what we did was we identified facilities that had these PCR machines. You've heard about them, my institute, Noguchi, ACCR in Kumasi. We also have the CSR in Accra, with the Public Health Reference Lab in Accra. We have the Veterinary Services Director that has 3 testing centers throughout Accra, Laboni, in Takoradi, Pong Tamale. We also have a Public Health Lab in Tamale. We have the Konfanoche Teaching Hospital that also has a PCR lab. And so all these facilities have come together to form the lab testing network with PCR for Ghana. What we've done is that we have provided training, we have strengthened the ability to conduct testing, and these have been kind of strategic. So we've covered the southern part of Ghana, we've covered the middle part of Ghana, covered the northern part of Ghana. So the plan is to ensure each region has PCR testing going forward. And I'm glad to report that we are on track with this, because to ensure continuous testing, the plan was to ensure that there was sufficient laboratory supply to go along with providing surveillance support and also for case management, that is clinical cases. And you just heard from Tabuaji the status of the surveillance and also the case management effort. Of course, all this data is because the lab has been able to confirm the suspected cases and also provide the backup for the management of patients. So we did come up with a bulk procurement scheme to provide sufficient resources to up to 300,000 tests. This scheme was developed in conjunction with the Ghana Health Service and the Ministry of Health, with support from the Ministry of Finance. And we were strategic enough to go direct to the source, to China, where most of the laboratory equipment and supplies could be competitively sourced. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through its China, has worked on behalf of the people of Ghana to source this equipment at a competitive price and to purchase it in bulk. So I'm glad to report that the first shipment arrived on Saturday with the flight that using the strategy of the flight that brought back the returnees. So we did get a significant quantity of lab supply on Saturday. Another flight arrives today, so we will get more supplies. And finally, the rest of the bulk shipment is scheduled to arrive in Addis Ababa tomorrow, making arrangements with Ethiopian Airlines to fly this into as soon as possible. So you can see that we actually have I can just give you some of the figures. We have about 150,000 swabs, sample collection medium. We have over 100,000 KN95 masks. We have over 700,000 nitrile exhalation gloves. We have 260,000 autoclave bags. We have PCR tests to do 500,000 tests. We also have microcentrifuge tubes, we have cryo vials, we are buying new PCR machines, and we're also buying what we call glove boxes that will enable us to do some work in some of the labs. So we've put together a comprehensive program which has been funded by the Ministry of Finance to support the labs to provide PCR testing. The second thing that we've done is that we've looked at the existing capacity of the health system. And the National TB Program has equipment on the Gene Expert platform. Now, this platform also recently had a test for COVID developed. We looked at gene experts, which are all over Ghana, about 150 sites are planned, and these are in each region of Ghana. So the strategy has been also to try and deploy testing on the gene expert forms. Unfortunately, due to the current global crisis, there has been a lot of pressure on the company that produces the gene expert test for COVID. So although Ghana has placed an order for 40,000 tests, to date we have not received the initial 4,000 that we thought would have received by last week. So we actually have a plan to deploy these quickly to the Upper West, the Upper East, to the central regions, and also to supplement testing in the Western region as well as the Volta region. The decision will be made as soon as the tests arrive in country, and it will take us just 1 or 2 days to train the staff and to deploy. So this is a fluid situation, and we're hoping the supplier will be able to provide an update on the rest of the 30,000 so that it will supplement the molecular testing for within Ghana. The other thing that we've done is also to come up with a plan for testing in Ghana, and I'm glad to report that the GRA and the Customs Excise Division have put this into operation, are implementing this. We've done some training, some equipment have arrived, and strategically this will also be deployed when necessary. To go alongside this is also to provide support for patient management at the treatment centers. So there is also a plan to establish labs with the capacity to test for COVID at the UGMC and at the new 100-bed facility that has been constructed at the East Hospital. Now, all this does not go without data management. So the lab network has worked closely with the Ghana Health Service for the deployment of the SOMAS tool, which is an online electronic tool that enables data to be captured electronically. From the experience and some of the challenges that we have had using paper case-based forms to capture data, we have been able to transform now into electronic data capture. And this is being deployed in all the centers alongside the surveillance and the case management. Another thing that we have done is also to work closely with the private sector. The private sector has been to provide services for COVID, and the Ministry of Health has developed guidelines to ensure that the private sector works together with the public sector to ensure an efficient testing system for COVID-19. So we actually have in Accra the Nyaho Medical Center that has started providing this service. We understand that there are 2 other centers, the Akai House Clinic and the MDS Lancet, who are also will soon be fully accredited to provide services. And we encourage the private sector to engage with the Ghana Health Service and the Ministry of Health so that we can form an efficient partnership for testing for COVID-19 in Ghana. Another thing that I'm glad to report on is the use of RDTs. Let me emphasize that the Food and Drugs Authority of the Ghana Health Service and the Ministry of Health has not registered any RDT for diagnostics. The FDA continues to evaluate commercial RDTs that have been submitted, and as soon as a suitable RDT that has high sensitivity, the ability to pick up true positives, high specificity, the ability to pick up true negatives is found, this kit will of course be recommended and action will be taken. So far, we have not found any kit that has more than 65% sensitivity, the ability to pick up positives. That means that if you use the RDT in this room where there are 100 people, and if there are people who are positive by PCR, 40 of you will be missed by the RDT, and that's not good enough. That's why we continue to use PCR. However, recently, the Ghana Health Service has come up with new guidelines for the discharge and recovery of COVID-19 patients. So we are doing a study supervised by the Ministry of Health and Ghana Health Service to see whether patients who are being discharged after 14 days when their symptoms have receded, whether people who tested positive did not develop any symptoms, have been healthy and have not developed signs of illness 14 days afterward onwards, whether we can use an RDT to determine what is their immune status, whether they have developed antibodies against COVID-19, against the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So this study is still underway. We have seen some interesting results, and we think that going forward, there will be the possibility, the potential to use these rapid diagnostic tests that detect antibody to use alongside when people recover from COVID-19. So I'd like to emphasize that RDTs are not authorized by the FDA for diagnostic use in Ghana yet. I think I will conclude by mentioning one factor which my colleagues are very interested in. That's motivation for the lab staff. They've been working 24/7. We appreciate the support from some commercial, some partners. Some, refreshments and gifts have been provided to the lab staff throughout the country, and I wish to say thank you to corporate bodies who have supported us and who continue to indicate support for us. I should mention that some corporate bodies are actually providing equipment. You've been seeing on the news, we've received fridges, freezers, testing material, testing equipment, and we are very grateful for this because it goes a long way to enhance what government is also doing. And especially some of our staff, our young graduates, and we've looked at enhancing manpower, specific COVID-19 testing in this emergency and this crisis. And I'm happy to announce that the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Finance are looking at coming up with a scheme to offer specific employment to some of our young graduates working at Noguchi and KCCR, and of course in some of the other centers, so that we can have a dedicated team who will continue to provide laboratory testing for COVID-19. So in a nutshell, this is the update from the lab. I think it is good to provide this update so that you appreciate the challenges and understand some of the efforts that are made to provide, testing to support the tracking, the treatment of COVID-19 in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ampofo, for that update. And colleagues on the screens, you would see, I think, some of the images of the arrivals of some of the logistics as they are coming in. Prof, when you join us for the question and answer segment, there's one question I'd like you to answer for us. So when can we expect our testing regime to be back full throttle? Prof, if you are hearing, when you come back for the question and answer segment, we'd like you to tell us, so when can we expect the testing regime to be back full throttle when you do the question and answer segment for us? Colleagues, just before you ask questions, let me just share a couple of points with you. One is on safety in schools. The government continues to monitor safety in schools following the reopening for final year students to step up their tuition and prepare for examinations, and the admission of the gold students to complete their tuition. Now, while investigating specific incidents that have been reported of suspected outbreaks in some institutions, and while ensuring that safety on campus is not compromised, His Excellency the President has tasked a subcommittee of the COVID-19 Presidential Task Force to be set up to quickly address any challenges that may arise in the next 8 weeks while final year students are on campus. The subcommittee has also been tasked to oversee the operations of the regional monitoring teams, which are already in place across the various regions. The committee is to ensure that the guidelines on campus quarantine are strictly enforced and any gaps swiftly addressed where incidents are expected. And the general guidelines still apply on screening, ensuring that logistics are all available and utilized on campuses. We also acknowledge that parents may have anxieties when they hear stories. And these days you'd hear some stories, you see some stories online. And we're beginning to observe that sometimes when people hear these stories, parents begin to gather at the school premises, students themselves begin to gather. And it is rather in that exercise that we are escalating our own risks of contracting COVID-19. So we want to strongly encourage parents that if you do come across any stories, etc., relating to your school, the call center that has been set up for COVID-19 is from tomorrow being given additional persons to deal specifically with issues of parents and connecting them to the schools. So if you're a parent and you are reading a story online, you are hearing something, we urge you to call 311 from tomorrow. Dedicated officers are being put there to help connect parents to the schools, to validate whether or not some of these reports you are seeing are true, so that we don't have incidents, parents gathering at school premises because they have heard X, Y, Z. And we also continue to encourage the students. It is not in their interest to be doing these gatherings even when there's a suspected incident or an unfortunate situation like what happened at the KNUST Senior High School yesterday. Let the rules on social distancing and the rules on the preventive etiquette apply, and then let the authorities be seized with the details so that they can respond to it as quickly as possible. And where we find that authorities are not being responsive to the charge, as you have seen what happened yesterday, the Ghana Education Service and the agencies responsible for education will quickly intervene and ensure that the appropriate is done. So that's just a quick update on safety in schools. On the other front, government acknowledges the efforts of the Electoral Commission and security agencies to ensure that preventive etiquette, including social distancing and wearing of masks, is observed by persons who visit registration centers. But we believe more can be done by all stakeholders, the Electoral Commission, the security agencies, and citizens who are visiting these centers. We believe more can be done, especially in the cities and cosmopolitan areas. In the outskirts, you find there's a lot more observation and social distancing, but in the cities and cosmopolitan areas where the populations are high, in People's Rush, you still find persons who are not observing these protocols. Colleagues, all that is being done is to achieve a certain balance between a total lockdown of everybody until this virus possibly disappears, or easing up so that people can go about as much of their daily lives as possible while observing preventive etiquette. So if it turns out that there are still a lot of people who are not observing it, then you should be surprised if the cumulative case count keeps going up. We cannot have our cake and eat it, where in one breath we are worried that the cumulative case count is going up, but in another breath you still have a lot of people who are not observing the preventive etiquette. And we cannot say it strongly enough. COVID-19 is real. You have seen the number of persons who have died, about 129 so far. It's real. The government can only do a certain number of things for you. Close the borders, impose restrictions on activities, pass laws that people should wear their masks, encourage a lot of public education. But you as a citizen also have a responsibility. You have a personal responsibility to ensure that you observe social distancing, no matter the excuse or no matter the desire, whether it's to register or to do something else. You must observe it. You must wear the mask. So while we acknowledge that some are complying, the EC, the police, and some citizens are doing this, we think a lot more needs to be done. And this morning we want to reiterate that point, that the key actors, including the EC, security agencies, and citizens, should ensure that we observe these preventive etiquette at the various registration points, at the workplaces, in schools, and in our general activities. Because if we don't, then you will see the cumulative case count continue to rise. Our best bet is to ensure that while government is doing all that it is doing, we also comply. Because if we don't, then it will defeat the entire exercise we are embarking on. I'll take that in three very briefly, and then we'll take questions and answers. Abai any di yesukus yebi se one of my betron so here no enkonko chron so here no abai ni di akire say bambo e wo say obia ewo sukus ni mono ne nsaka nsem ba ku mienu miense poso a mpanifo ehwehwem ehu dia ekosi yanka na sabre na musuno ye hwe anim nhyehyeye a yede agu akwan mu wonma ese wa me ehoro yensa ye screening omo a ewo school bi a hye ne mask ade no ye bedi so ye sa na ema we nyina no mampani ama Covid-19 presidential task force no yate ko kitwa bi wase nipa be nsia bi mpanfo be nsia bi se na wotwe a eda ya nim aka ankwala ne di be wie na from so hwe fi school no aka be na wotwe pe about 8 weeks sa na wotwe mu regional monitoring teams region bia your team or monitor the air cost of school do ni mo regional monitoring teams no sa basunko yi na say omuma omani misa regional monitoring teams na chi enhwe say dia ya hye so omunye no omu di so pepe na say bibi to sin wo ebio nhyehyeye a say school bia mu sempo yesusu say obi ho ayehia na say bibi a baby I was say de koma obo no ho adwa kakra quarantine center wo ho ene kwan hospital be ho mperifo betumi afi ho aba behwe ne so ne ade no sa guidelines no kwan on be fa so ahwe say ye di so wo ba bibiara na sempo bibi to sin animanim na no o matumi aso ano tackling swiftly gaps that may arise eno so dey ide asho musa na yejitum say awofo sabre ya abefun tintan ni radio ni tv ni ade abe wo mo beti bibi say yes bibi asi wa how best ti say bibi asi wa say pe wo hweko wan krata mu a schools ni bebi wo ha school mpenifo ababo ntan say da bi nya no kre say bibi asi say nti e bi abeti bibi but ye hunu say tori bi na ti a bo na awofo no akobo chenku school ho bo say school nkala no so akobo chen oba bi enu mo na ye yesa say obi wo yare ni bi krampo e betu ti atese wo ye nyina ye ntem ti e besre awofo Dochina nopa Ghana Health Service in Penimfa risk communication near there omo amayen enipa ho a aban call center ye dey COVID-19 adwuma 31 call center no kofo be ho a omo boa schools and awofo nkitahudie no se ususu anasa wate bibi fa oba school ho e besra se 311 obi be ho a obeboa na o ma connect o any school no na said the ankofo keka wo tete na no kra o metumi a kira no kra na sei na school no e fa so etu ho anamo nye no kra nti ka wa koma to yem so a ombema waso atempa cha ba na 311 na stress a wo fon konkobo chenku e wo school eno mo na ebetumi ama bibi atochima ye nkwala so wo school na yesro akwanche de ama mask o mo share ni ade no o mo nkoso ni bi posi a mo ma school mpanimfo no asonte and say inspectors are omo yede omo agu form say wo mo nko enye inspect ni ade mo mo so asonte na se suku mpanimfo no po na entu hu amontema ama senior to say nra mpanimfo no animanim ya Ghana Education Service ni mpanimfo to me to hu anamo ye de ye ato ye ebi also ye stress Yajitum say Electoral Commission and security agencies omo afiase ye niema hodo a ebe registration na e koso no titru kura kese mu no nipa ntam te ye no akoyie nanso yagidi say ebetumi aye de since ukọ yinkura ase ne ade bebre na ndi nipa ntam tete e koso wo pa na mum kura kese ni mu no e na mu say nipa abochenku etetare ho a Electoral Commission and security agencies say omo tu wana mo by a GD so betumi aye de since kra enuanom yesrem COVID-19 no enye se bibi keke na ye keka wo wi nyina o ekum nipa Ghana ha se nipa oha eni eduonu oha ni eduonu nkono 129 oha ni eduonu nkono na ahwere omo nkwa ebetumi ekum enti emfa ne tra se na media me share mask na me home na media me share mask na mas ase ma ye kaka bibi ana bibi da bi ebetumi ekun ti esre aban betumi aye dia o ye watoto borders o de asrafo na immigration fo na ade agugu ye borders nyina hwese obi entumi enwuram obi suntumi nkwa abonte se be on fam na kwan so niema enuru aye to ne ade se ne professor ambekire aban ye ni na aboa wo or the tabuna to two near my hood, so Suku Crampono, Kakrabi, Abs, and Kalanko Sorry, I can't watch no much from sorry, we have a fear. The Akanesa Woltime Muni, also the Osa we, O Mask, Albeshe, Nipanamuntetia, Utan Sanko Bino, also be so. And you say, and sa a juma a ban a yinano, Yankasi a juma no atosin. As a second, no, a ban by any day, but 1 year with the Yanka, a betosin, a best threat. So Bibiara, so now coach road, ona woko adwuma ona woko suku say sorry o sarachi o himfo niam ya kan no emfe ni agro yentumi nhwe ne say wote say number na kosoro a na wo ye mahyew nanso de wo say wo ye na wan be kan number no ho no eno de wo nye wanya wo ba be kan no nti yesre da yensayem yesre se mo mayen fa ne serious na yembo yin na ye ho ban madam wase. We're going to take questions and provide answers at this point in time. Could you let's start with you?
Kujajman from JoyNews. The World Organization has acknowledged that there is emerging evidence that coronavirus can be spread through tiny particles suspended in the air. This means that there's a possibility of airborne transmission. This question goes to the Ghana Health Service. Are we then going to revise our protocols with this new development? My second question will be to Noguchi, Prof. Ampofo. With the delivery of this equipment and then laboratory supplies, what will be Noguchi's testing capacity on a daily basis? And then beyond testing, are we looking, I want you to share with the public what Noguchi is doing in terms of getting a vaccine or something that can cure or treat coronavirus one time. To Information Minister, people are not complying with the directives at workplaces. When the Trade Minister was here, he outlined certain measures workplaces should enforce. Beyond that, are we going to see government doing better in terms of enforcing or making sure that workplaces enforce these protocols at their institutions?
Good morning, Honourable Minister.
Just before you go on, could you, the question on Noguchi's testing capacity when everything arrives, are you asking about Noguchi specifically or the cumulative testing capacity of Ghana?
Well,
okay, because I think that's what you're looking for. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Doctor, Patrick Mabaji, just to add to the first one of the disease being airborne, as announced by the show. Now, when is this airborne? What are the implications? What are the effects? As an experienced medical officer, if the disease is airborne, what is the implications of such a situation? What must the people do, talking about masses, to avoid this infection? Now, my second question, Dr. if someone has retired but has a special skill that can be of the Ghana Health Service, are you going to record that person to come and, as it were, reinforce the health workers? Do you have in mind? And Dr. Ampofo, there's
Professor Ampofo. Professor Ampofo.
Sorry, I'm sorry. People are saying that...
People don't joke their titles at all.
Yeah, I agree. People are saying that the equipment being imported and those being given as donations are problems, but they are saying that some of them are not very efficacious or suspicious of efficacy. How true is this? How are you going to deal with it? And then if somebody, is it possible that somebody can be wrongly diagnosed? Because I heard a news article yesterday when it was diagnosed wrongly and sent to a different place, I don't want to mention the hospital's name, and then subsequently she died. Is it possible that someone can wrongly be diagnosed and have some consequences? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Minister. My name is John Awuni. I represent Kesben. I just need some clarification. The churches need to more or less educate their members about the wearing of the nose mask. I've seen a charismatic church that has put together an information on the nose mask. I'm just seeking clarity on that. And what I mean is that a carrier of the COVID without the mask on can infect, at least the infection ratio will be about 70% to somebody who doesn't put on the mask. That is, an infectious person can transmit to at least 70% to somebody with a mask. And again, about 5% of that same infectious, that is the one with the COVID, can also give, there's that 5% probability of infecting or transmitting to somebody with the mask on. And then again, I just want clarity again with regards to the issue of the subcommittee on the COVID.
So you're asking him to confirm
whether it's indeed accurate with regards to the message that the charismatic churches are putting out to the public as a form of education on the importance of
that if you wear the mask,
yes,
it can cut transmission by about 70%.
If you are, let's say somebody is having the virus,
yes,
and he is not on the mask, or
yes,
he's on the mask,
yes,
and then you, the healthy person, is not having the mask,
yes,
there's 70% possibility of infecting the one who is healthy and is with a mask.
Okay.
So let's say a COVID person is on a mask, there's possibility of 70% infection on the healthy person. And then if the infectious person is wearing the mask, and then I'm also a healthy person wearing the mask, there's that 5% possibility of me getting the...
Okay, I get it. So I think what we are looking for is that what is the science behind the wearing of the masks? How does it cut transmission rates?
And my final question is on the same COVID, and then people who visit hospital. Yesterday, a man at Newtown, an elderly person, was sick in the morning. He went to the clinic to seek for treatment, and all of a sudden he died. The body was brought back because of Islamic regulations. Then taken to the mosque at Newtown, and burial was conducted yesterday. Such situations, how do we ascertain whether it is COVID related or not? And if it's COVID, now that he's buried, the family bathed, took him to the mosque and did all they wanted to do to finally bid him goodbye. Will it be at risk in situations like this? And finally, the subcommittee on this COVID-5, the presidential subcommittee, can you make their names available for the public to know and how they are helping to fight this pandemic? Thank you.
Thank you. And I think your last but one question fits into a brief on Tuesday about some of the challenges we are seeing in the Zongo community because of the practices there. But Dr. Boaji would respond to. Let me recap. So, Professor Ampofu, what will be Ghana's cumulative testing capacity after all the arrivals? And I asked, when are we expecting to get to this point? There's a question about whether or not indeed this virus is airborne, and if it is airborne, what would it mean for all our preventive etiquette and our protocols? That question, I think, either of you, both of you can help me with it. What's happening to the possibility of a vaccine, maybe globally and Ghana as well, Professor Ampofu? And then there's a suspicion that some of the donated or imported items for testing may not be very effective or may even be tainted. A reaction will be appreciated. Dr. Boaji, again, the question of this airborne thing and how it may lead to a revision of our protocols, if any. Is the Ghana Health Service interested in recalling retired health workers? Do you have need for retired health workers? It's another question. And how effective is the mask in cutting transmission? Some of us are being mentioned, but what does the science and the data tell us? And then finally, any caution to the Zongo communities beyond what we did earlier, because as is being mentioned, there are persons who may be passing on, it's still business as usual, and there's a fear that it is possible that there may be a big case. What sort of advice do you have for them? Now I'll take two questions the two questions to general government. One on the workplace governance and enforcement. Yes, government is considering an inspection regime for workplaces, and if it becomes necessary that some, may I say, more daring steps be taken on workplaces that are to be openly flouting these regulations, we will do well to announce same. But yes, we are considering at least under the Trade Ministry, there's a factory inspection unit. We are exploring how to step that up to go a bit beyond that. And if it becomes necessary that some more drastic steps are taken, we will let the nation know. This committee I've spoken about comprises Dr. Insia Sari, Dr. Okoboy, Dr. Patrick Aboaji, Dr. Boaji Costa, and Dr. Educhum, Deputy Education Minister. They are the members of the subcommittee that has been put together.
Thank you very much. I think we have always known that the inspection that's concerning whether it's airborne or whatever, we always know that it is in droplets, and the issue is that if you're wearing your mask and then the virus is not able to get into contact with you, if you are not touching anything, that will give the virus on your hand and carry some of the orifices where the virus can enter. That's either the eye, the nose, or the mouth. Then obviously you are not. So we are not going to have to change our protocols. We just have to abide by the protocols and make sure that wherever it is, all of those orifices are not open for the virus, you will not be able to get transmission. If it is airborne, what it means is that it's a bit more efficient transmitter than that. As long as you are protecting yourself, you are okay. And so answering both questions, so that's the implication, is that you still need to ensure that you now strongly have to abide by the wearing of the mask, and in addition to the social distancing. So whatever it is, distance is still important from wherever the virus is coming from. Dr. Sarkodie will take the issue of the mask, which is a bit related to what I'm talking about in terms of the numbers. We've always had a policy of keeping our retirees when their skills needed. And that's why we continue to bring, if you have a pulmonary specialist that we need, we'll bring. If you have somebody, a physician who can be of help, we always recruit them. So it has always been our policy to use our skilled staff wherever they are. And this even creates a more urgency for that. And I remember the very first statement that was made was to recruit many of those who can be useful. And we are currently working with many of them. So, we're doing that. The burial of the dead, I think if someone goes to a facility and die within a certain period, usually that's a coroner's case, and so the necessary precautions are done. So we will encourage all that. In the event where you are not sure of what is, the necessary precautions of getting the environmental health to assist you extremely important. Sometimes the facility may have had the clinical condition of the patient, so they know exactly what has happened to the patient, that they may take the necessary, they may not allow them to go through the normal processes. But where they are unsure about the case, it's a coroner's case, which means that even the body should be released in the first place. And secondly, the necessary precautions will have to be taken, especially in this time that we have the COVID-19 around. So thank you. I think those are all the key. Dr. Sarkodie will take, just add to what I've said as the mask is concerned.
Thanks very much. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, the Director General mentioned most of the key issues that required response, but then I'll just add a few. With regards to how the use of masks can contribute towards the reduction of transmission. Indeed, we are using multiple interventions to address this pandemic, whilst we don't have an effective, efficacious vaccines for now. Each of these interventions have some level of contribution to reducing and mitigating the risk that we do have. The various interventions that include the use of face masks, social distancing, hand hygiene, respiratory hygiene, contact tracing, quarantine and facilities, isolation, all these things do contribute. To clearly establish to what extent and put figures to this would require that this one and ignore all others and observe how much would be the impact on transmission. Typically, this study is not allowed. As we are moving in this pandemic, there will be natural experiments. For one reason, some of these may be present, others may not be present, and then people may observe it, and figures may come out. But what is most important is we need to use all these interventions. If you use a number and ignore the others, the risk profile goes high. It's good that people are a couple of figures, but these figures for now, to me, the most important is that as much as possible, let's use interventions. So what you observed and came up with this thing, you cannot challenge for now somebody's observation. As we move along, more and more observations will come, which will be described and come out as publications. Based on this, you use them as our basis for including and adding onto science. I think that is what I will say for now. Thank you very much. Use of masks. You also have the various types of masks. The N95, which you use most all the time when staff and other frontline workers are working with people that are confirmed, people suspected. The N95 has the capacity to filter as maximum as about 5% of the particles in aerosol in the airspace. That is very protective and very helpful. But even then, there is minimal risk of some of the aerosol coming through. But that this virus, the size is such that the N95 is able to filter almost all. So it's very, very protective. When you use the, yes, maybe permit me to continue like this. When you use the surgical or medical mask, it also has potential to up to more than 60% filtration of the various particles that will come out of the airwaves. When we use the cloth masks, the cloth masks we have here in Ghana, which is locally produced, the Food and Drug Authority have informed us, having done some tests and assessed the usefulness of these cloth masks, have indicated that the cloth masks that they have evaluated locally produced, their usefulness is very close to the surgical and medical masks. They have documentaries to which we have watched some of these things. So depending on each of the masks that you are using, and the N95, even we have the N99, which may be going too much extreme, but then for this purpose, the N95 is appropriate, which will filter more than 95% of the aerosol particles that we have in the airspace. So that's what I would say for now with regards to figures that have come out in respect to the use of face masks and then also the other intervention measures. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And at this juncture, Dr. Bedusa Akode will change his mark. Doc, thank you. Prof, you're going to join us. Let's have the podium sanitized briefly, and then Prof will join us with responses. Do we have further questions, colleagues? Okay, so the final batch of questions after this one.
So, Dr. Sarko, like me, have a spare mask. So, I have a couple of questions. I think I'll take the virus airborne because Dr. Sarkodie and Dr. Boaji have dealt with it. You cannot see a virus. Remember that. Okay. So whether it's airborne or it's on surfaces, please accept the evidence that the scientists bring out continuously. I think those observations, as Dr. Sarkodie, are constantly being updated. So I don't think it's a fair comment that people say that WHO continues to change its mind. I think WHO continues to update us as new evidence comes out. And that is the best. You don't want to be using knowledge and old tools when superior techniques are coming up. That's why we use PCR to detect the virus. And that's why as modern equipment, modern technology comes in, we use it and adapt it, and then we improve our lives. Testing capacity. So I was trying to do a calculation. I think we're about 320,000 tests now. And we have 10 testing sites. We're hoping to have 2 more testing sites added on. But we will take a strategic decision when the equipment actually arrives. Because we've seen the need, for example, supplement testing at KCCR. We've seen the need to enhance testing also at UHAS in the Volta region. We are doing an assessment currently of the PCR testing, and as soon as the equipment arrives and also donations from private sources, we will then see which testing centers need to be found. Also, the testing strategy, we vary it according to the situation. We've noticed that there's an apparent increase in some of the positivity. Sometimes it's because we accumulate the samples. So in order to have a faster input, we have actually suspended pooling, and we are now testing the samples individually. So that also accounts for delay. So unfortunately, we don't have a constant number. You know, this is not a factory. This is not a car protein facility where we have things being rolled out on a factory line. And don't forget, we work 24/7, but we have to push our staff and know the limits. So the number varies. I think at Noguchi we do about 1,000. KCCR does about 500. The others do sometimes 200, 300. And currently, one strategy we are being applying now is that the CSIR has just, validated the equipment, is able to do testing. So we are sending RNA extracts from Noguchi to CSIR for them to test. So you may have Noguchi coming out with figures of, say, 3,000 tests done yesterday. Maybe 500 of them were done at CSIR. So overall, as I've said, the equipment and the supplies we're getting enable us to probably do about 10,000 tests per week. We think we'll be able to up it to 15,000. Currently, we're receiving up to 20,000 samples across the testing centers. And our target is to be able to test these samples and send the results within 24, 48 hours maximum. So it's actually looking at a testing strategy to be able to return the results within 48 hours maximum for particular cases, and for hospital cases, suspected cases, we want to do it within 24 hours. So it's not the number that we test, but it's actually the throughput, the ability to return the results as quickly as possible, which is the target for us. Vaccine efforts. What we are doing currently at Noguchi, we are doing what we call basic experiments. Before, you had to sequence the virus that is circulating in Ghana. So this has gone into the global, sequencing database. So we know that the characteristics of the virus that is circulating in different parts of the world. This is important also for development of a vaccine, because you need to ensure that what you are producing covers all known strains or sequences around. Another aspect of the work is to see whether those who are falling sick, those who are unfortunately dying, whether the viruses in them are different from the ones that are going around in people healthy and not showing any signs of disease. We've actually tried to categorize, the samples that we've from Ghanaians, and we are doing another study to sequence those viruses, which will give us more data in line with the global trend. Now, this is also an Africa-wide effort, which is being coordinated by the Africa CDC in Addis Ababa. And we have a constant weekly teleconference, which looks at, the data that has accumulated from Nigeria, from Cote d'Ivoire, from Dakar, from Ghana, from South Africa. So we put all this together, and then the scientists can then analyze going forward. Again, on the global scene, specific for Africa, the Africa CDC, the African Union Commission, organized a teleconference on vaccines last week and reviewed, the various strategies, the advocacy by governments, scientists, and looked at what would be the enabling platform for Africa to actually move forward to be able to produce vaccines itself. And has established a subcommittee to look at how a vaccine COVID-19 can be manufactured in Africa. So these are developments relating to us here. I think the fear and anxiety about a poisonous COVID-19 vaccine that could be deliberately, used and target us in Africa, I think is far-fetched. Please remember that there are also scientists who think that probably in Africa we've had a less severe effect of COVID-19 vaccines that we took when we were children, BCG and other vaccines. There are some studies that are showing that probably those vaccines that we took kids may now be helping us indirectly to resist COVID-19 naturally. So I think we should take things with a pinch of salt sometimes and defer to the science and ask them to explain properly so we understand the phenomena. All equipment and supplies donated to Ghana. I assure you that the GSA and the FDA are looking and scrutinizing everything that we receive. The mask I'm wearing came from the Japan Foundation donation. We tested these at Noguchi. They were also fit tested at FDA. So every single equipment that comes into Ghana is subjected to scrutiny before it is deployed for use. And of course, the procurement follows international standards and requirements as well. We look at the country of origin and ensure that they have a certificate showing that the equipment has met their standards, and also we rely on the FDA and the GSA to check. The different diagnosis, that is sometimes a problem. Remember that doing a test depends on three things. One, the sample that is collected. So for COVID, we actually have three types of tests that are collected. Sputum, we take a swab from the nose, we take a swab from the throat. So if the sample is not collected properly, if you're not able to produce sputum, maybe you spit instead of bringing phlegm and you don't have a productive cough, your sample may not be of good enough quality, and this will affect the final result. So there are some cases where there is a positive result. Later, when there's a retest, the thing shows negative, or first there's a negative result, there's a retest, and it shows a positive result. We have to eliminate, the confounding factor, which could be that a sample was not properly collected at some stage. But we have put into place quality assurance measures. Most of the tests that are done, we have a SEM in place where we recheck some of the positives, we recheck some of the negatives. In fact, the particular PCR kit that we have been using over the past 2 months has an internal control, and we actually have two targets of the virus, two parts of the virus that we look at in the PCR reaction before we declare somebody is positive. So there are all these things that are going on, and it's unfortunate that if you test 310 samples, you sometimes will have some issues. So we work closely with the Ghana Health Service and try and go back and look at issues when they arise to ensure that we are as accurate as possible. That's why, for example, we've held on with the use of the rapid diagnostic tests until we are sure which strategy we will use and which kind of test we will actually deploy. So in a nutshell, I think I've answered all the issues that arise.
We'll take the final batch of questions and then we'll wrap up. It's almost 11 o'clock already.
Minister, I may be indulgence. I think I omitted to mention the wonderful support from COVID Trust. You've heard that we've had some delays in the bulk procurement, and the COVID Trust has stepped up and is working with the Ghana Health Service to provide emergency lab supplies, some of which have already started arriving. So we are very happy and we are very grateful to the National COVID Trust Fund.
Okay, so we'll take the final batch of 3 questions. and then we'll wrap up. Yes, sir.
My name is Yapeko. I work with Atinka TV.
Please speak up.
My question goes to you. Government has laid down a lot of protocols, safety protocols, but still the cases are still going up.
Yes.
I'm asking, if the cases still goes up, will government consider a total lockdown? That is my simple question.
Thank you. Let me answer that even before you take your seat. This question has come up over and over again. Please let me be very clear with my answer. I have said over and over again, all cards are on the table. All cards are on the table. Government continues to observe the situation as it holds. Remember, before we started the easing of restrictions, His Excellency the President said that we were easing restrictions in these about 3 or 4 areas that he announced, and that we will be observing it. If as we're observing, we see high level of compliance and the numbers stabilizing, we may be in a position to do a lot more easing. If as we're observing it is not going that way, whatever consequential actions need to be taken, need to be taken. The President also mentioned that if it becomes necessary at any point in time to even impose a lockdown plus curfew in a particular area, he would not hesitate to do so. He has said it, we have reiterated it over and over again. The last time the press briefing here, somebody asked the question, I repeated the same answer. I then saw something online that I have said that after registration we are going to go into lockdown. I have never said that. I have never said that. So please, all can remain on the table. We continue to observe the scenario, and then hopefully, as we make point that people should comply, and people do comply, we will be in a position to do a lot more easing. If we don't, and the data says otherwise, the President will not hesitate to that way. And may I also say that those who take delight in the mischief of twisting things, you make the fight against COVID-19 more difficult than it ought to be. And if you think you are doing it for political expediency or for some other purpose, you are not helping us. We beg of you. Thank you. Chief.
My name is Eric Mo, and I work with Star FM. I have a number of questions. I'm hoping I can ask all of them. Now, this morning on Star FM, I spoke to a nurse at the chest department of the Lebu Teaching Hospital who has COVID-19. According to her, she's asymptomatic and in self-isolation, but she's required to travel from Potin in the central region to the hospital once a week for review and is paying for the drugs and the care she's being given.
She is required to travel from
Potin in the central region. She uses public transport as means of getting to Accra for care. If possible, we'll send a copy of that interview to the Health Service so they can interview. But in the meantime, what is the protocol for healthcare workers who test positive for COVID-19? And are they to foot their own bills? And also, are families entitled to free testing and care? With the widespread contact tracing for health workers who contract virus, in this case, her husband, her 9-month-old baby, and 3 other family members have not been contacted, traced, and tested. And so, if possible, we'll bring this to interview to them.
I'm sure Dr. Abuaji will be able to give us some holding comments while they look into this specific matter. This person was in studio or over the phone?
Over the phone.
Okay.
Now, the Ghana Medical Association in the Ashanti region say that the opinion that we have slowed or stopped contact tracing. We spoke to Dr. Parkwesi Bailey this morning as well. So what we want to find out is what's the situation contact tracing, because we spoke to a correspondent in the Eastern region who mentioned health professionals who have come into contact with persons who have tested positive, but their samples have not been taken to be tested as well. So what's the situation and how aggressive is our contact tracing and all of that? Now, on Tuesday, you gave an update on the president on his situation. Health analysts tell us that an individual only self-isolates when COVID positive and rather quarantines when negative, but have been in contact with a positive case. If the president is self-isolating or in quarantine, how is he as we speak? And can same be said for the justice, because we know he's also going...
I don't have a brief on the Chief Justice's situation. The president's brief is the one I shared with you on Tuesday. I don't have any new brief. Yesterday, I was aware that yesterday when we met overnight to review the data, he gave instructions on education, which is what I've shared with us. I don't have any news on that, but the brief I have from Tuesday and from what I observed today is that he's ill and hearty and doing well.
Okay, there's another question about the DG. On last Tuesday, during his briefing on the list of secondary schools that have potential cases, he mentioned Infantipim School. The school has come out to deny having recorded any case. If I can quote directly what the DG said, he said, in the central region, my current evidence is we have some 2 cases in Infantipim, one in Mankesi, and etc. And these are all in the early stages.
And the school says that no, they don't have a case, and so they want you to reconcile.
Clarify that for us. Okay. Then, yesterday as well, we spoke to the NAT, Ghana National Association of Teachers, and they are of the view that if possible, considering the cases that we've recorded in senior high schools and the resultant effects that we see in other areas, if possible, government should consider the closure of these schools. What is the position of government on this? And lastly, I want to ask if government is overwhelmed with the rising number of COVID-19 cases, because you reiterated the need for individuals to be able to wear their face masks and to adhere strictly to the COVID-19 protocols. Considering the number of government officials who have had to self-isolate, those who have willingly come forward to state that they are concerned.
Is government overwhelmed?
Is government
I'll give you a response to that one. Yes, sir. Your question.
Well, thank you. I'm Justice with Graphic. Under the bulk procurement scheme, how many medical supplies are we looking at, and what strategy are we ensuring? Are we putting in place to ensure that they get into the country as early as possible, considering the fact that number of COVID cases are increasing? I'm saying this because there's no one designated airline that brings the supplies to the country. We only use the airlines that bring the evacuees into the country. So, so how many medical supplies are we looking at bringing into the country in bulk, and what are timelines as well under the bulk procurement scheme? Thank you.
I have a question. Amongst all the people who I get requests for testing, media as well. So is the media also overwhelmed? Because I get requests from the media for testing. So the media, let me know your status with regards to COVID-19 testing.
But the last question specifically was about testing, correct? Okay, can you give us a ballpark figure on what you're expecting in terms of the supplies? And then I'll go to Dr. Abuaji, and then I'll answer the question on whether government is overwhelmed. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're looking at about 300,000 tests. So the supplies and equipment is targeted at, and we're looking at a 2-month period from the time we did the estimates. So to test between 100 to 300,000 people by PCR.
Thank you. Dr. Abuaji, should I give you a moment or? So I'll give you a moment. Question of whether or not government is overwhelmed. Listen, government is responsible, or government has a responsibility to ensure that a robust framework for battling COVID-19 is put in place. You recall that right from the very first night that we announced our index cases, we have regularly provided updates on what the government program is about, the kind of success that is being achieved in various areas. Some of the successes have led to other countries, other parts of the world, even learning from what Ghana is doing. But where we have concerns, we should be able to articulate it in all candor and frontally. One of the current areas of concern is how some persons are not complying. And that is why we are reiterating that this morning. Reiterating it does not mean that we are overwhelmed. Reiterating it is because it is a matter of concern to us that despite the successes being chalked in various areas, there are some who are still not complying. And that's why it's important to reiterate it. On another matter, I'm sure you recall quite recently, you saw some stories that supposedly quoted the health minister saying that government is tired. I'm sure you saw that. Yeah, he has since explained that no, he has not said government is tired. He was speaking in the Bono language, which was later translated, and he explains that what he has said is that he's been speaking about the tireless efforts that government has been putting in, and asking that people should support and complement those efforts, not that government is tired. I suspect that also feeds into this question about is government overwhelmed. No, government is living up to responsibility. Where we have hiccups, like we have done, we have explained to you the hiccups and how it is being resolved. Safety on schools, this morning we've updated you on how we are closing that gap, rising to the occasion to deal with the challenges that are ahead of us. But we are really concerned that there's a significant number of citizens who are not complying with the preventive etiquette, and that's why we did it this morning. Doc, wrap up for us, and then we'll call it a day.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I think the Star FM question first about the nurse who claims to travel to a center weekly as a follow-up. Obviously, if you are in isolation, you are not expected to go for these things. They actually call you, and that's what nurses do for other patients. I don't know why the nurse who knows what she's supposed to do gets up and sits in the trotro to the next level. So our person should rather be questioned as to why she's endangering other people's life. I think we need to confront whatever story she's saying and see whether who she really is, where she's coming from. Is she a trained nurse? Which facility does she work? So that we'll see what, if she needs some further education, we give her. The slowing down of contact tracing, that cannot be true. If you look at the average of the total cases that are tested, 203,000 are from contact tracing. And if you look at routine numbers, what tells you that it's about 1 to 2 on the average for every case, at least 2 contacts are being done. And if you are not doing contacts, how are you getting all the enhanced tracing? So I think we need to get some evidence to show that contact tracing has not stopped. However, if people are becoming evasive, that slow, make it difficult, but there's a lot of contact tracing. That strategy is there, and everybody who is tested positive, this level follows with your contacts, all your contacts, and test them. Yes, I might make the correction. So the last I mentioned Infansipim, I was actually going to say Infansiman. I think they are close. So it was really Infansiman that inadvertently I said Infansipim. So there were 2 cases from Infansiman record that we have, not Infansipim. At the issue of whether we are overwhelmed and closure of schools, the issue is that there are cases, no doubt, and all those measures that were put in place with masks, sanitizers, and the training was that we did not go in and thinking that nobody would turn out positive. The most important, what has been the response? Are we able to identify them early and isolate them? And I think that's what is being done. And I think we should just ensure that everybody does that closely, that whenever there is a suspected case, the system is activated to isolate the person, and so we are able to contain the disease. Because the disease is in our communities, it's in our workplaces, and also be in schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Colleagues, that brings us to the end of our COVID-19 brief for this week. God willing, on Tuesday morning, we shall re-engage and share with you the latest updates that we have them. I pray to make some time to make a very strong case for personal responsibility and citizens' responsibility as you go about your coverage and your programming support, which we thank you very much for. The government can do its part, but we all have a responsibility and we have to live up to it. Thank you. See you on Tuesday.
And that was the Information Minister Kojo Oppong-Kuma ending today's media briefing with a spirited appeal for personal responsibility for the general public. So, two key parts of today's updates from the Information Ministry. The first is the case count, of course, but perhaps even more key is the fact that we have been told that reagents and equipment for testing for COVID-19 have been procured. 500,000 PCR test kits, for instance, are set to PCR tests. Are set to arrive in the country very, very shortly. And so all other test centers apart from Noguchi and KCCR will be testing for COVID-19 very shortly. Professor William Ampofo, who heads Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research, actually said that he expects our full test capacity to range between 10,000 and 15,000 tests per week for COVID-19. Now, another key part of this is the fact that the rapid diagnostic test RDTs, which check for antibodies, are being used to test people who have recovered. Now, you would remember that the Food and Drugs Authority, FDA, put out a statement which said that no RDTs have been approved as diagnostic tools yet in Ghana. However, we saw that the Education Minister, Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh's statement said that he tested positive for antibodies with a rapid diagnostic test. Now, Professor Ampofo now explains that these RDTs, as they are called, now these are the tests that allegedly take some 30 minutes to see if indeed you have antibodies to fight COVID-19 in your system. And these tests are going to be deployed by the health authorities to be used alongside our normal PCR tests. These tests will be used to check if persons have recovered from COVID-19. Right. I've been joined here in studio I will be joined shortly by Roland Walker. Roland will be helping us go through our COVID-19 case count. We now have 23,463 cases after 641 new infections. These new cases were recorded in 52 districts across 8 regions. Over 1,400 new cases have been recorded in the last 2 updates from the Ghana Health Service. Now, the number of discharged persons after treatment has also gone up to 18,622, with 4,717 active cases remaining. Of the confirmed cases of the virus, 9,403 were detected through routine surveillance, while the other 14,060 were detected from contact tracing. The Greater Accra region accounted for 388 of the new cases, which are in 16 out of the 29 districts. According to the service, the majority of the cases in the Greater Accra region are from Kole, Klote, Dade, Kotopong, the Accra Metro, Ayawaso West, Lejokuku, and Tema, which have been previously identified as hotspots. The Ashanti region had 148 new cases from 18 out of 43 districts. Like I said earlier, Roland Walker is here with me in studio. Roland, first of all, how are you doing?
I'm good. I think a considerable aspect of what so far has been given as per our latest update is giving us the indication as to where we're going and driving with the cases. Exceeding 23,000, indeed the authorities have acknowledged, would mean that the onus then lies with everybody to make sure that we adhere to the protocols. And this has again been reiterated or re-emphasized at this point. I guess then we have to keep on with the education and get everybody on board so that we get to a certain destination. It looks like there's some fear and trepidation. And they also touch on the subject of the infections in the schools, Daniel.
Yes, which is another case for concern, really. I remember the Information Minister mentioned that the call center would now have dedicated persons who will be dealing with concerns about schools.
Yes, and on Newsdesk, what we're going to take a look at at 12 or midday, that will be on JoyNews today, is to have a conscious effort made, as we've spoken to Cassandra Chum Ampofo, to also get to know what the position of the Education Ministry is and then also get to know whether they are in dialogue or in consultations with the relevant state actors to take a decision. We do know that the Minister for Education, that is Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh, has indicated that there does not need to be a shutdown of the schools, but then the Ghana Education Service has already given a certain indication that consultations are wide. Of course, the Ghana National Association of Teachers, NAT, has also been speaking, and they've also had a few complaints about supply of PPEs and the preparation generally ahead of the reopening. I was speaking to them this morning and I know they were on the AM show as well. Yes. Yeah. So maybe we'll get to speak to them as well. And we'll get all these. What we'd want to do is to have a recall of what the minority had indicated based on their concerns on Wednesday about the current state of the infection rates in some of the schools. And we'll get first-hand information at midday, how many schools so far have been affected in addition to the Accra Girls Senior High School, as well as the number of schools that we've so far reported. And we'll get to know. So we'll hear from the minority, and our director will give us first-hand information, what they had said as a way of recap, as also we wrap up this segment and then wait for midday and get the latest update. But we will take a watch to that interaction. But you wanted to add something before? Yeah, I just wanted us to take note of this particular statistic that has been put out. At the very beginning of the update, the Director General of the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Patrick Kumar-Boaji, mentioned the 7-day moving average. And you would find that we have been told from the very beginning that our test positivity rate is taken in cognizance of all the tests that we've done and all the positive tests that we've done. That is not an exactly accurate figure according to health experts, because when your community spread starts, you have more tests, you have more positive cases out there, and so you need to start checking your average according to when certain major events happened. And so now we started using what we call the 7-day moving average. What this is the number of cases you got in the past 7 days. So that number has started going down as well. Our number of active cases also went down. It's now about 4,717. That number is lower. The 7-day moving average is also lower. Now, it's too early to say that it means that we are seeing a fewer number of infections, because remember, we are still dealing with the backlog. But if this trend should continue, then that is an indication that the disease is going down in the country. And I just wanted us to put that in perspective. And it's very important that Dr. Patrick Kumar-Boaji mentioned this, because our initial average was somewhere around 500. Now we are going somewhere around 400. So that's moving average. And I just want to encourage viewers that as we listen to government, keep an eye on that figure, the 7-day moving average. That number tells you what is really happening in the country. It is now around about 400 different cases. That means that every day, on the average, in the past 7 days, we've been seeing 400 new infections in the country that we live in. Well, a very worrying figure, especially when you put it in a context, and I heard you asking the health minister the other day, the deputy health minister the other day. You put it within a context that out of all the countries in Africa, there are 10 that are driving the pandemic, Ghana being one of them. These 10 countries account for 80% of all the cases in the 54 countries in Africa, which really tells us that we are not in a good place. Yes, we're not in a good place because of the numbers. The defense that the Ministry of Health puts up, and indeed the Ghana Health Service also puts up, is that it is because Ghana has been testing more. We are not testing like we used to do because we're doing pooling at the time. But it also gives us a certain indication based on what the scientists say as to how the disease travel is. The concern that even though the averages or overages have moved from 500 to 400, based on the 7-day moving average, you get to find that it still is a worrying situation for the associations of health personnel. And we're talking about the medical doctors, we're talking about the nurses, and now it's even transcended to the various lab technicians, and they are worried. They are worried because they have the disease rate among their colleagues going high. That also means that you're not going to have people on standby to care for those who not only have symptoms, but have been infected.
Remember the Tamale Teaching Hospital boss mentioned that 32 of his health personnel have gotten COVID-19.
Exactly.
It's not
and we know that at the last count, the Ghana Medical Association had indicated that they had seen a surge up to 150 of their members being infected. And indeed, when I had the interaction with the Deputy Minister, I did see some numbers among that also going up. And even though that has not been officially reported, it's a concern for the ministry, but it's more of a concern also for the health personnel on the ground.
And a concern for all of us, because I mean, if these doctors and nurses are not well, it means that we are all not well, really. So that's it for this segment. Of course, we brought you that news brief, the media briefing from the Information Ministry. Thank you very much for staying with us. We'll be back at midday to bring you Joy News today, where we'll go into more detail concerning these issues that we have brought up. We'll take you across the country to bring you the latest. My name is Daniel Daze. Thank you very much to my brother Roland Walker. We'll be back shortly.